Spoken World Online, week number 329 on July 21st, 2026. And we all hope that David Leo Sawa will be back next week because nobody does it as well as David does. But thanks to our brother Rick Spizak for hosting today. And it has been my distinct pleasure to serve as MC today. So I'm going to read and then we'll have Rick close us out. As I mentioned earlier, day after tomorrow, July 23rd, is Maybe Day. I put some links further up in the chat. And it's a Robert Anton Wilson inspired holiday. And I'm wearing Uncle Bob's hat today, which says, Hail Eris, Eris being the Greek goddess of chaos and discord. And I'd say we certainly live in times of chaos and discord. But being able to join with all of you each week has given me solace all through the 2020s. And I'm very grateful for it. So today I want to note tomorrow, the 22nd, is the birthday of my younger brother, Daniel, who sadly died 15 years ago, and I miss him. So I'm going to do some Daniel stuff today. And let's see here. We'll start with Daniel used to send out an email to his list, usually in the mornings, and he called it the morning wave. Here's an example. Hello from Port Townsend. Been cloudy and slightly overcast all week, but that is supposed to change soon. Got a chance to go up and take a look up at our campsite in the Olympics. Got in, and all our firewood and our table were just how we left them. What a great feeling to have your own special spot and less than an hour away. Well, that is it for now. Hope you and yours are doing great. See ya. Dan. That's how he always signed off, with the see ya. And here's a piece I wrote. The King of the Kitchen. Many of Daniel's adventures were culinary. He loved to eat and he loved to cook so that he could be sure he was having something good to eat, something he made. When Daniel was a real little kid, still having an afternoon nap, I went past the open door of his room one time, and he was standing in his crib with his back to me and looking out the window. He suddenly said in a high-pitched voice, "This is the French chef cooking. Today we are making salad. This is Julia Child. Bon appetit." I went and told Mom about it, and we had a good laugh. And a few days later, she showed me a couple of little paper cups she had found in Daniel's room, and he had drawn little dots on the outside bottoms. "David, they are little salt and pepper shakers," Helga said, chuckling. Like Julia Child was an early and enduring icon for him, not to mention Graham Kerr. And as a little guy, he was known to dart about the kitchen and hone in on the artichoke dipping sauce, eliciting this response from our father, John O. "What do you mean, eating all the sauce? My short friend, how do you expect me to serve artichokes when you eat all the sauce?" Many years later, when Chris and Dan were living in a nice big house off Morello Avenue with a nice big grow room and invited me over for a fancy lunch, Daniel served filet mignon with a green salad, mashed potatoes and gravy, and sauteed vegetables. But what impressed me most about the meal were the artichokes. Daniel instructed me to dip the leaves into the dish of melted butter before dipping them into the dish of seasoned mayonnaise. He was famous for using a lot of dishes and utensils when he cooked. If he could not use all of them, he used as many as he could. He was not as famous for restoring the aftermath of his exuberant cooking to anything like its former state. Helga's kitchen at the top of the hill was often the scene of such strife. One time in October, Helga and John O were away on a trip, and Chris and Dan were staying at the top of the hill. It was Chris's birthday, and Dan instructed her to stay out of the kitchen. After a long time, she peeked to find that every bit of counter space was occupied, and he was sitting in the middle of the floor, frosting a triple layer German chocolate cake. In the 1980s, Daniel, Dean Simpson, and I rode up the mountain to see the Grateful Dead play at Boreal Ridge. George James was living in Truckee at the time, and we invaded his house the night before the concert. You know what I'm going to do in the morning? Daniel said. I'm going to make the big breakfast. No, you're not, Daniel, George said, because if you make the big breakfast, you make the big mess, and you're not going to do that in my kitchen. Of course, fishing, foraging, hunting, and gathering are primal to eating. On a trip out to the Bay Delta that Dan and Chris once took with their other friend, Chris, Dan told the ladies not to worry for dinner. He would catch fish. So, taking his fishing rod up to the bluff by a bend in the Sacramento River, he lifted the pole to cast. And being a bit underweight, his shorts slipped and fell about his ankles. As Chris and Chris laughed heartily, Daniel, with his ass free in the breeze, a large party boat came around the bend in the river. The deck was crowded with people. And as they caught sight of Dan's naked butt up there, buff on the bluff, waving his fishing rod, they applauded and cheered until the ship had sailed on by. Here's a little piece that Dan wrote when he was very young. This is Dan Takes an Adventure. I had a friend named Jeff. Me and Jeff played a lot. We did a lot of things too. All that time, there was a strange man always looking at us. He wondered what we were doing. While another one of my friends, named Larry, was spying on the guy who was spying on us. So Larry thought he should jump down on the stranger. All that time, the stranger's name was John. When Larry jumped down, he didn't know John was pretty tough. When Larry was on him, John threw Larry off right into the dust. After that good boom on his head, he sort of had a bump on his head. When he got up, he saw it was late. So Dan and Jeff suggested they go inside and finish their day. And I'm going to close out my part of the show today with a piece by Bob Dylan, On the Road Again. Well, I woke up in the morning, there's frogs inside my socks. Your mama, she's hiding inside the ice box. Your daddy walks in wearing a Napoleon Bonaparte mask. Then you ask why I don't live here. Honey, do you have to ask? Well, I go to pet your monkey. I get a face full of claws. I ask who's in the fireplace, and you tell me Santa Claus. The milkman comes in. He's wearing a derby hat. Then you ask why I don't live here. Honey, how come you have to ask me that? Well, I asked for something to eat. I'm hungry as a hog. So I get brown rice, seaweed, and a dirty hot dog. I've got a hole where my stomach disappeared. Then you ask why I don't live here. Honey, I gotta think you're really weird. Your grandpa's cane, it turns into a sword. Your grandma prays to pictures that are pasted on a board. Everything inside my pockets, your uncle steals. Then you ask why I don't live here. Honey, I can't believe that you're for real. Well, there's fistfights in the kitchen. They're enough to make me cry. The mailman comes in, even he's got to take a side. Even the butler, he's got something to prove. And you ask why I don't live here. Honey, how come you don't move? And in the words of our much missed John F. McMullen, thank you for putting up with me.